Hello everyone, let's review the 3-card blind main event tournament results for March. This was the first month that cards from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set were legal in the format, and surprisingly, they contributed to spicing up the meta without actually introducing anything super broken. We also had a strong turnout this month, with 351 players overall, 96 of which were brand new players to the main event. So if you are a new player watching this video right now, thank you for trying the format, and I hope to see you again next month. The combination of interesting new cards to play with and a high turnout of new players contributed to this being a particularly diverse meta. Out of the 351 submissions, there were 254 unique decks. If we weigh the cards in these decks by their performance and run them through the Simpsons Diversity Index, we will see that this was a significant increase in diversity compared to last month, and it's actually the most diverse meta we've seen since March of 2025. The 3-card blind diversity grade for this month was an A-. The new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle card that deserves to be discussed the most is Rat King Verminister. The 6th most popular deck this month was Lotus Petal, Rat King, and Undiscovered Paradise. Undiscovered Paradise will allow you to get a disappear trigger on Rat King every turn beyond the turn that you played him, and Lotus Petal will cover that initial turn for you. This makes Rat King an incredibly powerful all-in threat that grows tall and wide at the same time. That being said, the deck is very fragile to multiple forms of interaction, so although it was a powerful addition to the format, it didn't dominate the meta. The most popular deck this month was Crystal Vein, Magus of the Moon, and Mox Ruby, which was not the most popular deck by a large margin as a consequence of this meta being particularly diverse. Magus of the Moon is a highly meta-dependent card, and this month it underperformed. I think diverse metas like this one make for compelling experiences for players, but they can make it challenging to provide high-level meta synopses. I think from here you're going to get a more clear understanding of the meta if we move on to discussing our winners. In Novice 4, our winner was Seafell, who was playing Assassin's Trophy, Golgari Rot Farm, and Treetop Village. This was the second most popular deck this month, and it has been a consistent performer for a long time now. Assassin's Trophy goes a long way in being able to neutralize a critical threat or cut your opponent off of a critical mana source. The deck tends to be safe into most metas, so it's not surprising to see that it was a popular pick into this meta as well. In Novice 3, our winner is Hell is Real, who is playing Bayou, Inquisition of Kozilek, and Old Growth Dryads. An efficient 1-drop combined with a well-rounded hand attack spell is a 3-card blind classic, and is likely to be a defining part of any meta. In Novice 2, our winner was Yak, who was playing Mox Sapphire, Mutavault, and Tideshaper. This was a particularly popular deck last month because the combination of Bitterbloom Bearer and Peat Bog made Tideshaper's ability to turn off non-basic lands very attractive. Unlike Magus of the Moon, which is a all-or-nothing meta call, Mutavault can give you a fighting chance in matches where your Tideshaper isn't pulling its full weight. In Novice 1, our winner was MTG Chemist, who was playing Mana Vault, Mox Jet, and Rotten Mouth Viper. This deck has existed for a long time, but this is the first time we're covering it in a video. A big driver for why you haven't seen this deck in a video in the past is that it was overshadowed by other similar fast all-in strategies. Rotten Mouth Viper can be cast on turn 2 by gobbling up your mana rocks, and it will win the game by your 4th turn thanks to its powerful ability involving blight counters. In this 3-card format, there are essentially no cards to spare when it comes to sacrificing permanents and discarding cards, so Rotten Mouth Viper hits tremendously hard and fast. In Aspirant 4, our winner was Misk Me, who was playing Mox Jet, Mutavault, and Traumatic Revelation. This is another blueprint for powerful 3-card blind decks. Mox Jet, a man-land, and a 2-cost hand attack spell, particularly ones that offer an alternative mode in matches where you can't make your opponent discard a card, have been strong performers in recent history, including with the recently banned Dai Li Indoctrination. And because it didn't win any pods this month, I think it's worth calling out now that one of the decks tied for the third most popular this month was Auntie's Sentence, Mox Jet, and Mutavault. So there are a few different options here that are definitely worth considering. In Aspirant 3, our winner was Thing in the Ice, who was playing Acacian Store, Maze of Ith, and the Wandering Emperor. After Angel of Sanctions was banned at the end of December, there was some ambiguity about what the next best storage land payoff in combination with Maze of Ith would be. Although there is likely still room to brew and explore, I think enough time has passed that we can say confidently that the Wandering Emperor is a top choice for storage land decks right now. In Aspirant 2, our winner was Decoy, who was playing Abigail, Eloquent First Year, Pete Bog, and Wanted Scoundrels. Abigail is a relatively new card to the format, and it occupies an interesting niche with its ability to serve as a soft form of removal against creatures with powerful effects, or a way to juice up one of your own creatures. Wanted Scoundrels is an interesting pairing here because its high stat line makes it an ideal creature to buff with Abigail. Unlike options like Rot Curse Rakshasa, Wanted Scoundrels can perform alright even if you don't use Abigail on it. This was an interesting and creative list, and I'm curious to see how it performs in future months. In Aspirant 1, our winner was Sky Sleepies, who was playing Mana Vault, Mox Jet, and Rottenmouth Viper, which is further evidence that Rottenmouth Viper's entrance into the spotlight is a meaningful one. In Contender 6, our winner was Stone Sparrow, who was playing Daze, Student of Warfare, and Tundra. Given its status as a formerly banned card, it's not surprising to see Daze taking a pod win. Most 3-card blind decks don't have an extra mana to spare, which makes Daze a very potent form of disruption. In Contender 5, our winner was Gravity, who was playing Crack the Earth, Dirkwood Baloth, and Undiscovered Paradise. Dirkwood Baloth is a slow to deploy but high impact threat, and Crack the Earth can slow down your opponent's game plan or completely shut them out entirely, depending on their mana source. In Contender 4, our winner was the Moisturized, who was playing Chancellor of the Forge, Mental Misstep, and Pyrokinesis. This deck puts all of its resources into disruption and has multiple angles it can keep your opponent out of the game. For the most part, in this pod, Pyrokinesis more than did the trick, claiming free wins against many decks that were running smaller creatures as their primary plan. Mental Misstep was still a critical element to this deck coming in first, catching things like Dark Ritual and Telgelad Stylus that Pyrokinesis wouldn't be able to deal with alone. In Contender 3, our winner was Pac-Man MTG, who was playing Assassin's Trophy, Golgari Rot Farm, and Treetop Village. With this deck being a consistent performer across multiple months, I don't feel like I have any new remarks to make on it at this point, so let's keep moving forwards. In Contender 2, our winner was Speed MTG, who was playing Etched Slith, Mox Jet, and Mutavault. With a number of storage land decks and depletion land decks in this pod, as well as things like Leonardo Cutting Edge, Etched Slith was eating well. Even in matches where opponents weren't using cards with counters, Etched Slith is an evasive threat that grows rapidly, so it can hold its own in races against many different threats. In Contender 1, our winner was Pwned Noob, who was playing Island, Seize Claim, and Sleep Curse Fairy. I would consider this a classic 3-card blind list, and Seize Claim is really the star of the show here. Although Sleep Curse Fairy has an attractive stat line, evasion, and protection against most forms of removal, it's really quite slow compared to other threats in the format. Interestingly though, in this pod it was able to outperform the Mox Sapphire Mutavault Tideshaper deck because of a few key matches. One being the matchup between these two decks. Sleep Curse Fairy comes online quick enough to win the game when it's on the play, and when it's on the draw, it can be held up as a blocker to deal with Tideshaper, and Seize Claim can deal with Mutavault. And finally, in Exemplar, we had a tie between Beanslinger 2 and Fractal. Beanslinger 2 was playing Greater Gargadon, Restore Balance, and Undiscovered Paradise. Greater Gargadon is a really great pairing for Restore Balance because its long suspend timer can be seen as an upside. When Restore Balance resolves, Greater Gargadon will be in exile, so you will have no cards in hand, no creatures in play, and no lands after Greater Gargadon eats your Undiscovered Paradise. In most matches where Restore Balance resolves, your opponent will be left with nothing. And Fractal was playing Reinforced Ronin, Stormworld, and Undiscovered Paradise. Stormworld is a symmetrical effect that punishes players for having fewer than 4 cards in their hand. Both Reinforced Ronin and Undiscovered Paradise make this symmetrical effect a lot less symmetrical. Despite their impressive performances, Beanslinger 2 and Fractal both fell short of the top position on the leaderboard. This will make Epsilon greater than 0 our reigning champion for a 3rd month in a row. Epsilon greater than 0 was playing Lush Grove, Pendelhaven, and Thalid. Lush Grove is like a really awkward version of Seize Claim. It gives your opponent 3 different colors of mana to access, but it still removes all of the abilities from those lands, which notably includes the abilities that depletion lands have and storage lands have. And the combination of Pendelhaven and Thalid continues to be proven as a powerful one. Both Thalid itself and the saprolings it produces are targets for Pendelhaven, letting this deck push for extra damage and threaten to trade up its smaller expendable creatures for more valuable ones. Although Epsilon greater than 0 didn't claim the pod win, they are sitting on a comfortable cushion of elo for winning the past 2 months in a row. So they will continue to hold the champion title with an impressive 1894 elo rating. And with that, I'd like to congratulate all of our winners one more time before we move on to discussing the cards that will be included in this month's community ban vote. The first card we will be discussing is Undiscovered Paradise, which was the 4th most popular card this month and is the 5th most popular card of all time. At a glance, this card doesn't look like much more than a typical dual land, but the unique characteristic of it returning to your hand allows it to shed things like Seize Claim and Evil Presence, and gives you a slight advantage when dealing with cards like Stormworld, regardless of whether you're the one playing Stormworld or playing against it. And in this month specifically, it also was enabling Rat King Verminister. It is worth mentioning that Rat King can use Oboro Palace in the Clouds to almost the same effect as Undiscovered Paradise, but it would make the deck vulnerable to cards like Seize Claim that it previously didn't have to care about. The impact that Undiscovered Paradise has on 3-card blind is subtle, but constant and widespread. Banning it will nerf some top decks and give players a reason to consider running a basic land instead of cramming Undiscovered Paradise into all of their decks. Next, we have Assassin's Trophy, which is on this list because of the highly consistent performance of the Assassin's Trophy Golgari Rot Farm Treetop Village deck, which was the 2nd most popular deck this month, a multiple pod winner, and a deck that has persisted across multiple metas as a top performer. We've really seen the full extent of what this deck can do, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. As a matter of fact, it is the most popular deck of all time that is still legal to play. In my opinion, it is well overdue for a vacation to the ban list. Next up, we have Rotten Mouth Viper, which is at the helm of everyone's new favorite deck that wins on turn 4 after so many of its sibling decks have been banned. I still think Rotten Mouth Viper is new and exciting, and potentially has more we can see from it in the format. Unlike some similar decks that came before it, like Unstoppable Slasher, Rotten Mouth Viper can't be deployed on turn 1, which means that this deck is vulnerable to hand attack for an additional turn compared to some of these other decks in the past. I think that added nuance makes this deck interesting, but ultimately the speed of this deck places immense pressure on the rest of the meta to keep up with it. This will be a moment for the community to consider whether it would be interesting to explore counterplay opportunities against this deck, or whether the speed of this deck just makes it feel like another flavor of the same sort of deck that we've banned in the past. Next we have Anvil of Bogarden, which is a card we haven't talked about yet, but it is an enabler for the Anvil of Bogarden Crystal Vein Nether Spirit deck, which has been influential at the top levels of the format. This was the 7th most popular deck this month, and it was the most popular deck in Exemplar, indicating that top players especially have identified this deck as particularly impactful. Banning this card might slightly reduce the pressure for players to run decks that dump their entire hand on the first turn of the game. If it doesn't end up banned, this is going to to be an important deck for people to watch out for, as awareness of it will only continue to grow. And the final card on this list is Mutavault, which was the third most popular card this month and has been a cornerstone of the format for a long time. Overwhelmingly, the structure of Mutavault decks is to include a Mox and some kind of 2-drop. It could be a creature like Etched Slith or Tideshaper with Mutavault acting as a backup threat, or it could be a hand attack spell like Traumatic Revelation or Auntie's Sentence, or some form of interaction. I think having a manland like Mutavault in the format that can be activated for 1 mana is a crucial part to format diversity, but we're seeing Mutavault decks of all kinds overperform across the board. A possible solution here is to simply nerf the viability of all of these decks simultaneously by taking Mutavault out of the picture and forcing players to rely on Blinkmoth Nexus instead, which is a considerably slower threat and isn't as good at blocking. I think that there might be some folks who would be concerned that this is swinging too far in the other direction, making these decks a lot less playable, but the entirety of Mutavault decks are sitting at an around 60% average score. I think the category can eat this big nerf and still remain viable and a relevant part of the format. And that wraps up our list of cards that will be included in this month's community ban vote. Don't forget that you can cast your vote by visiting the website in the description of this video. This was a really nuanced meta, and I'm excited to see which directions the format evolves in over the coming months. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you soon.